Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamakyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sadhujatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Radha Krishna Padan Sargam Lalita Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karna Sindho Neelabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namurtute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpata Desha Krapa Sindhute Vishwapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Namo Namo Niruddhaya Hrishikesha Indriyatmane Namah Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nirvatatmane Swarga Pavarga Dwarai Nityam Suchi Sade Namah Namahiranya Viryaya Chaturvotraya Tantave Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Staya Bhutari Srimate Bhaktivedanta Manor Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shritatmane Gaura Karma Shakti Bhaktivedanta Manor Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Staya Bhutari Srimate Bhaktivedanta Manor Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pacharni Nirvise Vishnu Prachate Devatayani Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for having me. I was actually quite a bit nervous. I was thinking, I'm a Grihasti, and these are very dedicated warriors and dedicated servants of Lord Chaitanya who have dedicated your lives in saffron. And what could I possibly share which would be of any value that you could use and you could move forward in? And then I reflected further and I realized that Lord Chaitanya did not give separate instructions for the ashramas, did he? He didn't. He gave us unequivocal single instructions on how everyone should proceed. So I said, okay, I could be sharing that. Whatever works for me would perhaps also, enthuse others. So I said, okay, let me just share that. Okay, that was the purpose of coming here. I said, okay, I became more comfortable. Until then I was a bit nervous. I was thinking, how could I do this? I have nothing to share which would strengthen the ashram. And I said, I don't have to strengthen the ashram, I have to strengthen the practice. And I can just share a few things about the practice. Now, the most important thing that we would want to realize in Krishna consciousness is that there is a principle of attraction, because Krishna is akarshana. Krishna attracts. And the principle of attraction of Krishna operates under two levels. Number one, it operates through the holy names. We get attracted to the holy names. And the akarshana of Krishna also operates through the medium of Guru. So we all get attracted through the medium of Guru, we all get attracted to the medium of Siksha Gurus. And amongst the Siksha Gurus, we get inspired by one, and then he becomes the Diksha Guru. And the Diksha Guru process is also very clearly defined in the Bhagavad Gita, and I would like to talk about a very specific verse of the Bhagavad Gita, which, I have a lot of partiality towards the Bhagavad Gita because it allows me to understand the other Shastra. Without the medium of the Bhagavad Gita, I wouldn't be able to approach Srimad Bhagavatam, nor would I understand how to approach Chaitanya Chaitamrita, what to say of Chaitanya Chaitamrita. There's absolutely no way. So, the Bhagavad Gita's very famous verse, which we talk about, is 4.34, and which is the principle of Diksha, practically. The principle of Diksha, and when we come in touch with the spiritual master, is 4.34, where Krishna says that if you want to understand Tattva, you have to approach someone who is a Tattvadashi, or someone who has received knowledge through the line of Tattvadarshis. Tattva cannot be understood by apparent considerations that we can't really perceive through our senses. Tattva has to be understood through absolute consideration, and absolute consideration is available with the Tattvadarshi. So, Srimad Bhagavatam is Tattvadarshan. It is Tattvadarshan. Someone has practically viewed the pastimes of the Lord and have recorded the pastimes of the Lord after they have realized that knowledge. So, Srimad Bhagavatam is all about realized knowledge, it is about Tattvadarshan. Chaitanya Charitamrita is about people who have realized Srimad Bhagavatam, who are living the Srimad Bhagavatam. The principles of Srimad Bhagavatam are being lived in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is the reason why it's postgraduate. Now, how do we begin the attraction principle of Krishna when it comes to Sri Guru is in this particular verse, which is the Tadviddi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya Upadekshanti Te Jnanam Jnaninas Tattvadarshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. What is very important about this verse is the fact that one will not develop a mood of service towards the Diksha Guru unless they have developed or there's been a certain exchange where the Diksha Guru himself has deposited faith in the heart. The deep faith which the Diksha Guru and the Shiksha Gurus have in the heart, the extent of faith a person has gives them the ability to be able to deposit a fragment of such faith in the hearts on recipients of their knowledge. That's why we sing Guru Mukha Padma Vakya, Chittete Koryakya. The Chittete Koryakya principle of being able to completely transform the material principles in the heart and completely being able to transform our mooring to the material world happens when someone with very deep faith is able to deposit a particle of their faith into our heart, which is Ado Shraddha. There's no question of being motivated to serve someone and sit at their lotus feet and wanting to render service unless there's been a recipient, we have been recipients of deep faith. The motivation doesn't come. It doesn't come. There has to be something which has to happen where it shatters our own moorings to the material world, and then we realize that this person is someone whom I need to just sit at the lotus feet. The transformation occurs specifically when we hear classes, when we hear the Guru Mukha Padma Vakya, and that particular transformation just completely starts transforming the heart, and then we start thinking that every word which he says is, I got to change my life, I've got to change my life. So this verse practically talks about seva. There is no question of seva unless there is a transformation. There's no question of seva without love, and loving devotional service does not happen unless there is some kind of agyata sukriti which has been deposited and experienced by the devotee. Harinam Chintamani talks about 3 different types of sukriti. It talks about karma unmukha sukriti, jnana unmukha sukriti, then it also talks about agyata sukriti. Devotional service, Bhakti Devi acts and we wouldn't even know where we are getting mercy from. So we act and then we get mercy from Bhakti Devi and we wouldn't know why. That is the principle which is being explained in the principle in the life of Sri Narad Muni, where he goes through the experience of accepting the remnants, receiving mantras, and that's it. Then becoming, a pure devotee with his endeavor after that. So, having said that, the point is that we begin with Shraddha. Although Shraddha is the first principle, and Shraddha doesn't happen on its own. It happens because there's a certain Agyata Sukriti, there's a certain connection, there's a certain faith. So the transformation in the heart is that our heart becomes soft enough to be able to receive the particle of faith which is being deposited, and we become very open to receiving such knowledge, and there's submission. Without submission, it is not going to work. So that's the first principle. First principle is to be able to be attracted by Krishna and to accept such a person. And once we accept that person, then my spiritual master, Srila Bhaktivedanta Manor, used to use the words, one should be ready to take wounds on behalf of the spiritual master. One should be ready to take wounds on behalf of the spiritual master. Used to be the word he used to use, practically. And that was the principle of dedication with which devotees used to accept the spiritual master, where the spiritual master's presence used to practically grasp and grip the person to such an extent that they can take wounds on behalf of the spiritual master. Now, once the Shraddha is established, then there is a certain principle. The process is being given to us, and the process is being given to us in Chaitamrita, Madhya Leela, I think 22:128, where we talk about the 5 different components of bhakti. So the 5 different components of bhakti, which is a nitya karma, is sadhu sangha, nama kirtana, bhagavat shravana, mathura vas, and Sri Murti Shraddhaya Sevana. So these are 5 principles of nitya karma. The nitya karma is something which we never abandon. So we never abandon, and for every ashram, this is consistent. Immaterial of which ashram we are in, these are 5 principles in which we are trying to move. The ashram is a vehicle, we are trying to move towards this. Nitya karma is Bhagavat Shravana. Bhagavat Shravana has to be there, and Nama Kirtan has to be there, but all of this would automatically take place if Sadhu Sangha is there. So the Sadhu Sangha is the most important component which is being emphasized here, and that is being emphasized by Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur as Adav Shraddha, and then we engage in Sadhu Sangha, and then there is also Bhajana Kriya. The Bhajana Kriya part is what is the very long stretch. Bhajana Kriya practically stretches right through from the point where we receive Shraddha into our hearts, right up to the point where one reaches the point of understanding the melos, which is being fixed in the service of the spiritual master, being fixed in the service of the divine couple, being fixed in the service of a servant of the divine couple whom we have particularly attracted by our mood, by our service. And that is the principle which stretches. So the biggest stretching point for every devotee is the Anartha Nivritti process. The Bhajana Kriya begins, and then there are many aspects which devotees have to struggle with, and that is the Anartha Nivritti process. Anartha Nivritti in itself is being defined again by Krishna, and it is being defined by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, and it is being defined in 7.16. Okay, because devotees come into the movement, they are in this mood. 7.16 talks about it, and this mood lingers on. We receive Shraddha, and then we are doing Bhajana Kriya, and we are trying to move away from this principle that is being enunciated in this verse. Chaturvida bhajante mam jnana sukritano arjuna artho jigyasurarthati jnani cha bhartarishabha. O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious beings, pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. Immaterial of which ashram we are in, until we reach the position of Nishtha, Anartha Nivritti is defined by 7.16. We fall in the category of Mishra Bhakti. There is Mishra Bhakti in terms of, it could be Karma Mishra or it could be Jnana Mishra. It is Karma Mishra if there are desires of wanting to engage through the principle of the senses, wanting to improve the desires and improve the enjoyment that is a part of the senses. It is Jnana Mishra if there is an understanding that sense gratification is a waste of time, but then being in this world with active senses is also a principle of poison, so I want to leave this world. Liberation. Krishna, take me out. I can't take it anymore because I've been trying my best, and then the senses are just wanting attention because I'm conscious, my senses are active, and then the objects of the senses keep distracting me. So take me out. That's the principle of Jnani, because the Jnani is one step better. He's not trying to enjoy the objects. He's not trying to place himself in a position of enjoyment. He is at least trying to alleviate that by leaving the world. Both these principles are being condemned as Mishra Bhakti by our Acharyas. Srila Rupa Goswami talks about it, and he says, Anyabhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavratam. He's very clear. Anyabhilashita Shunyam. He's practically saying Shunya. There should be nothing. Jnana Karmadi Anavratam. This Anavratam is the process of Anartha Nivritti. And that Anartha Nivritti is being defined by Krishna, that these men who are approaching me, they are distressed. And they are magnanimous because they are at least approaching me. So when we carry desires in our heart, we are having desires of wanting to follow the Nitya Karma to be able to chant the pure name. Our goal is to chant the pure name. The sadhana and the sadhya are the same. In prema, the pure name allows us to experience personal service in the spiritual abode. In Anartha Nivritti, the pure name allows us to progress towards reaching a point of understanding the melos. Until we reach the point of completing the Anartha Nivritti, we are very much in the material world, and as a consequence, there are always desires that are going to haunt us in one way or the other. It does happen. It's a matter of fact. So it's a gradual process of developing a higher taste, and as we develop a higher taste and we purify ourselves, we reach the point of Nishtha. Now at the point of Nishtha, one has to be above the spiritual, one has to be very close to the spiritual sky. They are in the highest levels of mode of goodness. By being in the highest levels of mode of goodness, one begins to position themselves to be able to not fight the senses. Every morning and during the day, one is not fighting the senses. The sensual fight is over. We have won over it. We have practically won over the sensual fight when Anartha Nivritti is complete and Nishtha is reached. There are perceptions of pleasure in the world, undoubtedly. Even in Nishtha, there are perceptions of pleasure in the world because one is a conscious being and can be stimulated by the presence of the objects of the senses. There can be slight distractions. But those distractions themselves are being overwhelmed. Now, there's an underlying factor which goes from the first stage of receiving faith from the spiritual master right to the last stage of having attained their original swarup. The underlying factor is that at each and every stage, the devotee is fostering and strengthening the sambandha jnana. Without sambandha, we are lost. The whole process is to strengthen sambandha. The sambandha starts from knowing we are dasa dasa anudas to knowing a specific mellow which happens at the stage of nishta. It's hazy, but we come to know what is the mellow of understanding, what is the relationship with Krishna amongst the four prominent mellows. And amongst those mellows, we start crystallizing, we start improvising, and we start strengthening sambandha jnana. And this sambandha jnana finally takes us to the point of complete knowledge of our eternal swarup. At which point, after nishta, the fight is over. Because the devotee realizes they don't belong to this world. That's realized knowledge. Before that, there is conceptual knowledge, and there are certain perceptions and there are certain gifts received during the anartha nivritti process which strengthen the concept as we move forward. So anartha nivritti is the biggest ocean everyone has to counter, and every preacher, since we are all preachers in the movement of Lord Chaitanya, we are trying our best to share whatever Srila Prabhupada has given us. This is the main task of every preacher. We have to focus on being able to assist each other with anartha nivritti, being able to focus on being able to assist whoever we come in touch with anartha nivritti. We have to take those who come in the Mishra platform of 7.16 to Anya Vilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadhyana Vratam. So that is the transition, and that is the point that we have to take everybody through. But that is not going to be possible unless we become quite selfish. How is that? The principle of being selflessness, principle of selflessness in Krishna consciousness starts with being very selfish, because we have to start working on ourselves. And unless one has an experience, one doesn't have qualified to be able to speak. We can't really share things theoretically. It doesn't work. It really doesn't work. There's a reason why the Shraddha, the particle of Shraddha, which is being deposited into our hearts by the spiritual master, it really takes effect because the spiritual master has had experiences. A personality who speaks, if he has experiences, then he has the ability to practically cause Guru Mukha Padmavakya Chitete Koryakya. There is no question of the chitta being transformed, consciousness being transformed without experiences. There is no question of attracting people by the chanting of the holy names unless one is really progressing, either chanting the pure name or progressing towards being able to chant the pure name. One of those. So our goal in Krishna consciousness at any level is to be able to focus internally on completely graduating from anartha nivritti and going from 7.16 Bhagavad Gita to something else, to Anyabhilashita Shunyam, and helping others come to that other point as well. And this requires our understanding that these senses exist, and different people have different desires, and they have different motivations, and that is their point of starting point. And they are not going to be attracted by this process of Krishna consciousness if we meet them at the same level as where they are. Our potency has to be much, much higher, but we package ourselves to meet them at their level in terms of preaching. We package ourselves to make ourselves very accessible so that they come to us, which is what the point is. We do not intimidate them, we package ourselves so that we become accessible, but we cannot make a difference if we are on their level. We cannot. We cannot. So that is the main responsibility, and this is exactly what it is to take on the wounds of the spiritual master. The spiritual master is carrying an extraordinary burden. Taking on this extraordinary burden becomes the first responsibility of the disciple. And this burden is to clear ourselves of anarthas and to be able to accept the burden of being able to help others. And it is not going to work unless we have the potency. It's not going to work. This is the primary challenge which we face across in all ashrams. It doesn't matter which ashram we are in. The ashram is a vehicle. Ashram is a vehicle. The ashram is a vehicle, it has to be chosen very carefully. It requires to be chosen very carefully. If you don't choose an ashram very carefully, then the ashram becomes a feeding point for all our energies. The ashram becomes a feeding point for all our energies. Being in a certain ashram, if that becomes the entire focus of a devotee's life, then they might just be practicing the Vedic paradigm of Varnashram. We are not going to be practicing service. So if you're going to be constantly fighting against our natures and then trying to see that I have to remain in an ashram somehow or the other without figuring out which is better, then that is an issue as well, because the ashram itself can become a liability. It's almost as if you're getting into a situation which you can't handle. I was giving an example yesterday in the class that it is perfectly fine for us to say that all I'm going to need is a toothbrush, a toothpaste and a gamcha, and I'm going to get into a train for my journey. There are many of us who are like that. Prefer just to travel with a toothbrush, toothpaste and a gamcha. We don't need anything else. We will just fold up the gamcha shawl, sleep on the whatever is available. We don't care about anything. We just go. That's the journey. There are many of us who are like that, and that's perfectly fine because that's the vehicle. You were chosen to travel light. Nothing wrong with it. Some of us can't travel with a gamcha, toothbrush, toothpaste. We need a pillow, we need pots of prasadam, we need all kinds of paraphernalia just to make the journey happen. The issue is in devotee lives, and this is consistent over the years, depending on whichever ashram we are in. There could be grahasthas who want a lot of things to get into the train because they're not very comfortable traveling light with gamcha and toothbrush, who get into the train and start complaining that, oh, I need a pillow, I need this and I need that and all those things. They start worrying about the comfort after getting into the train because they're not used to it. They're thought that they could manage with a towel and a toothbrush. They want to travel light. They get into it and then they start fighting because they're not the type who should be traveling light. Then there are grahasthas who start complaining. Marriage, 2 kids, and then saying, no, this is not for me. This is not for me. This is heavy business. This is just too heavy a burden. The journey has become too cumbersome. There are too many things which we're carrying around. The luggage is too much. I want to go back to getting a gamcha and a toothbrush and a toothpaste. Both of these are very problematic because both of these, if it is not well thought out, is going to draw energy with the energy that can be used to actually strengthen us and move us towards the process of clearing our anarthas. Both of these are both problematic. So ashram doesn't matter, it really doesn't, but choices have to be made exactly based on what is our propensity and what we want to do. Every ashram has intense austerity associated with it. Once we begin chanting the holy names, sincerely, even every grahastha would not feel like even working outside. The grahastha practically goes through the torture of working outside to feed the family. They have to. It's a torture, coming in touch with the corporate world. Many of you, if you worked outside, you know what it is to regularly come in touch with the corporate world and then deal with things that are completely disconnected from the objective, but yet you have to do it. It's an austerity. The brahmacharis have a different kind of austerity. And in both cases, the difficulty is if you wait for too long to make changes, it becomes too problematic. So it requires a lot of planning. The grahastha ashram requires a lot of planning, intense planning. The brahmachari ashram also requires a lot of planning. And the planning in both has a similar parameter. The parameter is nitya karma. What is my nitya karma? Where am I going to get sadhu sangha? Where am I going to be able to hear Bhagavad Shravanam? Where am I going to be able to do Nama Kirtanam? Where am I going to engage in Murti Seva? Where am I going to be able to live in a dham where there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of spiritual potency? This is the common parameter immaterial of whichever ashram it is. So choosing the ashram is very important because it can draw energy if we fight our nature. Very important. Very, very important. It's critical. And Srila Prabhupada talks about it in Srimad Bhagavatam. He gives an amazing, amazing purport. It is Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th canto, 2nd chapter, 30th verse. And this purport is one of my favorite purports because it practically defines the need for devotees to really wake up and be able to understand what is required in Krishna consciousness. It's a very practical statement Srila Prabhupada makes in that purport, 8.2.30. And in 8.2.30 he talks about the fact that it is Gajendra Moksha. Gajendra, the king of elephants, is struggling in the water. And as he struggles in the water, the crocodile, which is also in the water, is gaining strength by the minute because it is in its natural habitat. Gajendra, the elephant, is struggling and struggling for thousands of years and is losing strength day by day because he is out of his natural situation. Srila Prabhupada goes on to write that the soldiers in this Krishna consciousness movement should maintain physical, sensual and psychological strength because they are going to be needing it. They should put themselves, therefore, in a normal condition of life. Then it defines what is a normal condition of life. A normal condition of life is to be able to understand what are the duties associated with each ashram and varna, and which is my place in society. Which is my place in society? Which varna and which ashram do I belong to? What is my place in society? That is normal condition of life. That normal condition of life is going to be required, and I'm going to explain why. We have to understand that we constantly hear simplicity is Vaishnavism. And what is this simplicity all about, if you were to define it? This simplicity is all about being in the mode of goodness. It is simply about being in the mode of goodness. Simple arrangements allow us to remain in the mode of goodness, and we need the mode of goodness in strength for us to be able to take off. We really can't be putting ourselves in a situation which is so complicated that we are fighting the complications which require rajas, and the passion that we require to fight the complications takes us away from the main platform that we need for us to be able to receive greater and greater levels of advancement in spirituality. That is a normal condition of life. The normal condition of life is to be able to remain in the mode of goodness. Grihasthas have a problem because they expand, they constantly expand. They have a tendency. Devotees, Grihastha devotees, have an issue. They expand. They buy small house, big house, bigger house, bigger house, 1 car, 2 car, 3 car. It keeps going up. As they ride up in their corporate ladder, they become better and better. They receive more money, bigger the paraphernalia which they expand. As it becomes bigger, it becomes more complicated to manage. And as it becomes more complicated to manage, and I'm talking about this because we are dealing with Grihasthas. As preachers, we deal with Grihasthas. We have to understand what's going on there. As it becomes complicated and complicated and complicated, to manage this extraordinarily large portfolio which they have developed in terms of how they live, they need a lot of passion. The moment they start focusing on rearranging their lives to manage what they have accumulated and take care of it, passion increases. Since passion increases, they are not able to sit still and chant japa. They cannot do any kind of seva which is associated with the movement because passion has increased, it is not the mode of goodness. And automatically they face issues in being able to remain sadhakas. This is the primary difficulty for most of the constituents to whom we talk to. They have a difficulty in rearranging life. His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj, when he was here in the manor, long back, he made a statement, and his statement was that chanting 16 rounds is not a big issue. Everybody can do it. It's easy, in fact, to do 16 rounds. Ours is the easiest sadhana one can ever think of. Devotees have complicated lives. That's the issue. The real issue is that devotees have complicated lives. The process is not complicated. The first lecture we come into Krishna consciousness, they tell us what we need. There's no ambiguity. It's a very straightforward process, it's easy to do, but then devotees have complicated lives. They have complicated ways of eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Very complicated. And as it becomes more and more complicated, when you want to resolve complications, they employ passion. Because you need to make so many arrangements, you need to make so many changes, you need to make so many different alterations. And the moment they come in touch with the material mode of passion, very soon they get frustrated because things don't work. They are swimming against the current. It goes from passion to ignorance. And then tamas starts. And once tamas starts, they stop their sadhana. And then they complain that the process of Krishna consciousness doesn't work. It really doesn't work. It won't work. It will not work because you're operating in unfriendly waters. We are not really fostering and we are not strengthening ourselves as we move on day after day after day. We are not. So that brings us to the point of having an understanding that this is the primary difficulty our congregations face. If you're Sankirtan party, if you're preaching, this has to be a part of what we are trying to convey to them about simplicity. It is a need in Krishna consciousness. It is a need. We should not be distracted when we know the principles. Oh, that's yours. We should not be distracted. There's really no need for us to be distracted. There isn't. If we notice the purports of Srila Prabhupada, he deals with this practically in every purport. He talks about the body, and then he talks about the mind, and then he talks about the specific part of the purport which he has to share. He's constantly trying to work on the false ego so that we could move away. But these are the principles of complication that we have in life. And this is the responsibility of the preacher to understand, acknowledge, and be able to act upon it. Right. Yeah, you had something? I'm sorry?
No, it's just my phone. That was my phone.
Okay, that's fine. Right. So this is the main issue. So once we have understood the issue, number one, as preachers, we can focus on altering it. Preach about simplicity, preach about the value of mode of goodness. Try focusing on being able to alter their lifestyles so that they can bring in the mode of goodness. This should be our focus, because this would allow them to make progress. Otherwise, we are going to have problems in this society. Because everybody is stuck in 7.16 of Bhagavad Gita. Everybody is stuck in 7.16 of Bhagavad Gita. And they have to move from 7.16 for any progress. And that requires a re-engineering of life and practically everything else that goes along with it. So that is the primary challenge in this movement today. We are expanding and expanding and expanding. We have a lot of grihasthas, and the grihasthas have this issue. They have complicated lives, very complicated lives. Since you are very fortunate to be in an ashram which allows you uncomplicated lifestyles, and the mode of goodness is freely available to you more than anybody else, then you have a better appreciation of the mode of goodness than everybody else. And the grihasthas don't have that luxury. Very few of them do. The most important principle which a grihastha has to follow is if we can cultivate a certain particular focus in terms of being able to assist them in being able to follow through with at least coming in touch with the mode of goodness very early in the morning. The yuga progresses from Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali. The yuga's progression is from the highest levels of mode of goodness, equal to the heavenly planets, right down to the mode of ignorance, which is there in Kali Yuga. The yuga progresses in time as well. Similarly, a minuscule is one day, and that one day progresses in different delineations of goodness, passion, ignorance, as we move on further and further. So a part of preaching, which also very clearly assists, is able to regulate those devotees by able to bring them to the platform of goodness as much as we can. The platform of goodness, passion and ignorance, it really doesn't matter if they've come to the stage of higher levels of understanding. It really doesn't matter. But early on, it really matters to the process of anartha nivritti. Right? So to conclude, because it's 12:30, we have shared for half an hour, we started out by talking about the principle of attraction, Ado Shraddha. Then we talked about coming in touch with the spiritual master and receiving the particle of faith, which is defined in 4.34, without which seva cannot happen. And once that seva begins, which is bhajana kriya, under the direction of the spiritual master, a very important transformation occurs during initiation. The process of initiation, when the spiritual master is practically handing the beads and the nama to the disciple, he is empowering the disciple to be able to chant. Because he is giving us orders, saying chant 16 rounds. The moment he is giving us orders to chant 16 rounds, there is power in that order. That power comes onto the disciple, and that allows the disciple to chant. Without that power, the disciple can't chant. So when we hear that the spiritual master takes on karma, we are practically hearing that the spiritual master takes on karma, which would allow the disciple to be able to move forward. That is empowerment. That empowerment principle extends all the way further. He is empowering us to be able to get more and more deeply involved and get more and more absorbed and get more and more empowered with compassion and a lot of humility as well. So Mahaprabhu's last instruction to us, which was in Sikshashtakam, was the process of being able to chant. And Sikshashtakam, Trinadapi Sunichena Taroriva Saishnuna, Amani Manadena Kirtane Sadahari, has to do with the principle of being able to accept our environment as if it has been arranged by Krishna. This is an extraordinarily important principle which every ashrama, every varna has to learn in this movement. The environment has been arranged by Krishna. This is Trinadapi Sunichena. If we accept that the environment I'm in, the conditioning I'm in, the day I'm in, it is exactly what I need for me to be able to move forward, accept it, say Krishna, this is your arrangement, then that becomes Krishna's arrangement. It's a mystical arrangement where we are able to transform our circumstances and use the Shakti to be able to move forward. It's a mystical change that occurs when we accept that instruction. Mahaprabhu did not leave elaborate instructions. Why did our acharyas constantly say Trinadapi Sunichena? Trinadapi Sunichena, Taroriva Saishnuna is simply about accepting the environment. Accept the environment we are in as if it's been arranged by Krishna for our benefit, and then act upon it with complete courage. This is the principle of Trinadapi Sunichena. This is the reason why he offered it to us. This is real humility. Accept it. Accept it with humility, saying, Krishna, you arranged it. Act upon it with courage by tolerating the circumstances. Then we are able to move on. Then, having said this, we are now talking about becoming fixed. When we become fixed in Nishtha, then there is really very little room for deviation, because a lot of our energy, 90% of what we are, will go into giving us the ability to chant Shuddha Nam. Nishtha is practically very close to liberation, at the highest levels of the mode of goodness, highest level. It is still mixed. So there is still some perception of pleasure. In bhava, the perception of pleasure becomes very, very slight. In prema, the perception of pleasure in dealing with the senses and the objects of the senses is completely absent. Why? Again, we want to conclude with this. The most important aspect of Krishna consciousness is to be able to strengthen our sambandha. The relationship that we have with Krishna at any given day, that's what the acharyas are doing. All the books, Srimad Bhagavatam, they're strengthening the sambandha gyan. The sambandha gyan starts with what happens in Ramayana, Dasa Dasa Anudas. It starts there, and then it becomes one of the four prominent mellows. Once that is recognized, then the devotee progresses on. At the stage of Nishtha, even further down in Ruchi and Ashakti, there's complete information available. And then in Bhav, the person is completely realized of his eternal Swarup. Complete information in terms of who the person is in the spiritual sky, what is the address, which Gaon are they a part of in Raja, what is the Seva, what is the Sambandha. Everything is provided to the devotee by the holy names. And once the devotee realizes that that's what they are, then this world is tucha. Liberation is tucha. There's absolutely nothing they want other than wanting to engage in service with the divine couple in different aspects of their relationship. So this process has so much to offer, and also there are so many wonderful milestones each and every year and each and every day for us to be able to attain. But all of this is going to be attained by dedicating ourselves to Lord Chaitanya's movement. And dedicating ourselves to Lord Chaitanya is very special. I caused a lot of confusion in one of my classes earlier on in this place. I said, right? I hope I did not. Okay, thank you. I'm not going to touch upon it. Lord Chaitanya is very special. I'm a Gaura Bhakta. I have an extraordinary bias towards Lord Chaitanya. If I go to Mayapur, I don't stand before Radha Madhava, I stand before the Panchatattva, because I'm very attached to Lord Chaitanya. And this attachment came about because of my Siksha Guru, His Divine Grace, Gaur Govind Maharaj. Just by coming in touch with his Vani and by coming in touch with his teachings, he just transformed my heart, and I developed a very deep attachment for Lord Chaitanya, which wasn't there before. By coming in touch with him, I developed that extraordinary attachment. And as a consequence, I have a tendency to constantly focus on the mission of Lord Chaitanya. If we focus on Lord Chaitanya, then at the stage, as we keep progressing and we dedicate ourselves to the mission of spreading the holy name, when the time comes, everything else will also happen organically. We just don't have to endeavor for Swarup Siddhi. The greed for attaining higher levels of knowledge about eternal Swarup is a matter of mere organic arrangement by the Lord's mercy. It's all a part of the holy names. The holy names unfold and they grant us all the mercy they have to grant us. So there's absolutely no need for us to specifically start focusing on it until the point where we really develop a deeper interest. And then there is lobha, there's greed, and then we start going towards that. And then there's special functions of coming in touch with special personalities who will be able to teach us how to move forward. Okay? So I want to end here, as we have spoken on different topics, but I want to end specifically by saying that there is nobody who is more fortunate than one who has come in touch with Lord Chaitanya. There's no one. There really isn't anybody. And we should be able to pay any kind of price just to be able to serve him. Any kind of price. And that should be a conviction. And this conviction will come along with the chanting of the holy names. There's nobody who is more fortunate than anyone who has ever come in touch with Lord Chaitanya. Most fortunate. Most fortunate. This is the greatest good fortune. Despite the complete disqualification of us to be able to receive anything from him, he has given us everything. He has given us something which we can't aspire for. The devotees in Vaikuntha can't aspire for. The devotees, the demigods can't aspire for. He has given it to us. So why wouldn't we be eager to pay a price for this? Right? Our spiritual master, before he left, he made this prayer in Mayapur. I shared this as well. And this is a daily prayer which he used to do, and he encouraged his disciples to do it. This is actually a prayer for empowerment. Even it is a prayer which is translated in English, it has a similar effect of practically asking for Nyabilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavratam, Anukulyana Krishna Anushiranam, Bhakti Uttama. This is a prayer for Uttama Bhakti. And the Uttama Bhakti prayer, which he used to offer on a daily basis, is in English. He used to say, go before your deities, or even go before Srila Prabhupada and say, take away whatever needs to be taken away from me, for me to be a perfect servant of Srila Prabhupada. Give me whatever needs to be given for me to be a perfect servant of Srila Prabhupada. Give me all the experiences I need, whether auspicious or inauspicious, for me to be a better servant of Srila Prabhupada. Auspicious or inauspicious, very clear. And then he used to make this very, very clear, that if I'm even thinking of anything, even if I'm thinking of anything which is going to go against the movement of Srila Prabhupada, sabotage it. He used to make this prayer to Lord Gauranga on a daily basis. Sabotage. Just sabotage my plans which are against the mission of Srila Prabhupada. And this is practically a prayer which can take one from the stage of Anartha Nivritti to Nishtha. It has the potency because you practically are putting ourselves in Krishna's hands and saying, Krishna, you rearrange my life, you rearrange my thoughts, you rearrange my consciousness so that I do not compromise on the mission of Srila Prabhupada, on the mission of Lord Chaitanya. Do whatever you please. I am ready to go through any kind of inauspiciousness or auspiciousness or whatever the case may be. So I want to end here because this prayer is very simple to understand. It's very, very clear on its intent. And if those of you who are interested in taking that, I'm confident. I have experienced benefits, enormous benefits. I'm confident that those of you who take it up would also experience benefits. The obstacles will go away, and Srila Prabhupada would give us, he would just make things so easy for us to be able to chant the holy names in terms of being able to finally reach Shuddha Nam. So I'll stop here, and please forgive me because I have a little bit of a belligerent or rather aggressive style of speaking, and it might come across to some as being a little bit too fanatical, but sometimes when you come in touch with philosophy, or rather when you come in touch with the Lord's movement, and it is so profound, it's so wonderful, we become a little too attached and we speak out. So I just want you to forgive me if any of you have felt that I'm a little too I don't know what to say, but perhaps too direct or blunt, So stop here, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm very inspired to be here for the last 15 days. I've been watching this amazing amount of activity every one of you engage in, and the next time I'll rearrange my schedule so that I can come for Sankirtan and Harinam. I was just hoping I could do all of that, and the opportunity was a little absent. I wish I could do all of that. That was a very exciting part about London. That there's so much Sankirtan and Harinam that goes on. And Lord Chaitanya will be very pleased with this. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you very much for your inspirational class. I'm particularly interested because you were saying how we have to deal with free-hustlers, householders, and their main problem is complicated lives. So then we have to know how to help them to simplify their lives. So for those who are not sort of on some career progression or something like that, they're just doing a simple job, is probably just be satisfied with what you have, don't hanker for anything more. But those who actually, they're on some career path, it may be more difficult, how to advise them, either not to bother, in that just be satisfied with what comes normally, or is it that they should just use or strive for, because then they'll have more resources to actually engage in Krishna service, and they'll be purified in that way.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Actually, a very good question. So, if someone is yet to reach the point of satisfaction that I've done what I need to do, and they're still striving, so what should we do? Should we encourage them to accumulate the resources? I would say both. Number one, I guess the bedrock or the foundation principle in which we have to move forward, for any devotee for that matter, is to be able to rearrange our life in a manner where we are able to enhance our ability for sadhu sangha, enhance our ability for nama kirtan and bhagavad shravana and Srimurti Seva. This is the foundational principle of how we can move forward, immaterial of who it is. Now, if the grahastha has goals other than any of this, it is an issue. It is an issue. There's no two ways about it. So the reason why such goals come about is because they have an identity crisis. They are not able to really accept the fact that they are servants of Krishna. Instead, they go on to the corporate atmosphere and they plug into the samskaras of that atmosphere and then develop aspirations based on their peers. Whoever is sitting next to them or their boss, they set their goals and then they keep moving towards those goals. So one of the main things in preaching is we have to ensure that they are aware of these goals and the fact that they have to have these goals as the big picture. And when they have these goals as the big picture, then it becomes as to what is it which is going to allow me to reach this goal. And that could be that someone requires 100,000 pounds and someone else requires 1,000,000 pounds. It is their poison. We don't really want to know which it is. The idea is make up your mind. This is the goal that you have to go for. Not trying to climb the corporate ladder, but this is the goal you have to go for. But to facilitate that goal, you might perhaps want to make 500,000 pounds or 100,000 pounds to reach the target of completely having paid off a home, having enough savings so that you can really put your heart and mind and body into seva and Bhagavad Shravana and to Namakirtana. So that particular realigning goals have to be done so that is an uncompromising position, because they can't really go forward unless they know that that is the goal, and then rearranging their lives to reach the platform of being able to retire. I was giving this example yesterday in the seminar. Someone met me who was 25, a 25-year-old, very aggressive, wanting to move up in his career, and he came to me for advice. I had actually put him on what he ought to be doing in terms of subjects, college and all that. So he came back again after graduating. He was just going to enter one of the more prominent law firms in New York City, and he was starting off with a salary that I achieved after 20 years of service. So he came to me and he said, Prabhu, what could I do? Thank you so much. You put me on track. What should I do? What should I do to be able to rise up? Because I come from the corporate background, more specific advice. I looked at him seriously and I said, plan for your retirement. He was 24 or 25 and he was completely shocked. And he looked at me incredulously saying, you're asking me to retire? Prabhu, I'm just joining. I haven't even joined the firm. I just completed my internship and I'm going to be joining next summer. You want me to retire? I said, yes, retire. And I told him, this is how you retire. This is retirement. I said, in the US, because he was in the States, I'm in the States. I said, in the US, find a congregation and real estate around the congregation that you can really afford. You're starting out, you may not be able to afford big real estate, purchases. I said, find out a good congregation where there's a very big congregation, Sangha, there's temple, there's active service. It could be Dallas, it could be Alachua, there are a lot of devotees. Find out where you can go. I said, once you do that, I said, go buy an apartment which you can afford right there and start paying a mortgage towards it. Rent it out. What would happen is 10 years from now, 15 years from now, you would have paid off that apartment. So you would not have to worry about a roof over your head. Neither would you have to worry about anything else. You would have retired practically in terms of what you need for you to be able to engage in Bhagavad Shravana and Namakirtan. And at that point in time, if you still want to further your corporate goals because you haven't lost taste for the world, go ahead. But then at least you have achieved some stability in life and you're not going to get stressed out like many grahasthas who haven't done that at the age of 40, 45, whatever the case may be. They're still struggling for their finances. So I think there's a little bit of practical aspect also which is required, where we understand that they have a lot of aspirations. We encourage them towards those aspirations, but then put a Krishna conscious cap on those aspirations, saying that this is why you need it. You need a house, as you rightly pointed out. You need a house, you need a roof on your head, you need infrastructure, you have kids, you have to educate them, that's your responsibility. Do all of that, that requires money. Then go for that particular money pot in your corporate career, then that particular distress of working in industry while you're striving and also having knowledge of your Krishna consciousness, it won't be such a big strain. At least you will be spending time at work thinking and contributing towards a larger big picture Krishna conscious goal. So this is the advice I gave them. I think perhaps if you find that it makes sense, that could be extended. I think it's a combination of both. There's a practical side to it. You can't really tell them not to do it. And second, it doesn't make sense to tell them not to do it either. honestly. It doesn't. A grahastha needs to be able to succeed, be able to bring in wealth. Some people approach me and they say, Prabhu, I'm making money, but someone else is offering me a bigger salary. Okay, then I tell them very clearly, for the same 8 hours, if you're able to bring in more money, go for that. As long as it doesn't really ruin your sangha, ruin this, ruin that, go for it. Because it's a practical consideration. If someone is going to pay you more, go for it, because you will reach your whatever you need for the rest of your life sooner.
So the key you're saying is that they should actually have Krishna conscious goals.
Correct.
And the 5 main processes being, they can perform those, Nam Sankirtan, etc. That should be firmly entrenched in as their goals, their main goals, and then under that how to achieve so that they can do that peacefully.
Absolutely, Prabhu. I think that's a very practical way for us to approach it, and it is required. It is required. The real issue is that our grahasthas develop grahamedi aspirations as they go along. They develop grahamedi aspirations. Okay, I get promoted, I need a bigger house. I need 2 cars, not 1. I need this, I need 3 cars. I have a bigger house. I move from one neighborhood, bigger street, bigger street. They keep expanding, and that's the real problem. And that's because they don't understand the goal of Krishna consciousness. They don't really understand. They have misconceptions about what they ought to be doing in terms of their role. So they don't. Mahaprabhu did not care for the king of Orissa until he came down wanting to develop faith. He said, let him come and show an interest in developing faith, and then I will talk to him. Mahaprabhu did not even care about who he was and what he did, because his movement will grow. And his movement will grow because he has spoken that it will grow. It will grow. There is Shakti in Mahaprabhu's words. Whoever takes up the responsibility in Mahaprabhu's movements will inherit that power, and they would do all kinds of wonderful things. So the issue with grahasthas is that, the grahastha ashram, is that once they go to the corporate world, they get inspired by people who surround them. And they set goals based on that, and then they keep moving towards it. I guess that's the main issue. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Generally, do grahastha devotees feel more inspired hearing another grahastha devotee, senior grahastha devotee speak, or do they feel that they can learn from the brahmacharis? What's the dynamics on the?
Thank you. It is not so much the needless to say, if someone is in an ashram, they perhaps understand the complexity of the ashram in certain ways, because they have samskaras, they have realized how to overcome those. So they might be able to address those points and perhaps with some realized knowledge in terms of, how they got beat up. So, I got beat up this way, so you don't get beat up. They have the ability to relate. But the underlying factor of being able to impress people and to create impressions, deeper impressions, is not so much in terms of the ashram. It is more so in terms of the power of the speaker to have realized the beauty of the process given to Mahaprabhu and being able to convey that particular power onto the audience. You see, it is more a situation of that. That's been my experience. But to aid that and to be able to make points which they can apply, I guess some practical experience would be useful. But there are many sannyasis and brahmacharis in our movement who have inspired many others. So, it's always been that way. So it's not something which is it's not a hindrance, so to speak. It's not a hindrance. But some practical considerations are very important, for brahmacharis as well. So before they deal with a grahastha congregation, to understand where they are. The issue is understand the material modes of nature. It's passion. The issue is passion. And if you have a complicated lifestyle, more passion to deal with it. So that's the main issue for most part in grahasthas. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for a wonderful class. So we talked about the need for the mode of goodness in order to cultivate good quality sadhana, and at the same time, in Mahaprabhu's mission, as Prabhupada has delivered it to us, preaching is a very important aspect of that. But the nature of preaching is that it's activity, and that's the mode of passion there. So what elements do you think are important for a brahmachari to ensure that he can balance the two effectively and ensure that he's progressing in his sadhana as well as his preaching responsibilities?
My humble opinion in terms of being able to strengthen ourselves, Grahedako, Banedako, Sadahari Boledako. Strength comes from chanting. So, there will not be the availability of space. Be it brahmachari ashram or grihastha ashram, we will not have adequate space in terms of, I want to refresh myself, kind of be able to reflect and grow and all this. This is a big challenge for sannyasis, it's a big challenge for grihasthas, brahmacharis, everyone. It will not happen. That intensity that we go through in the ashrams, in being able to maintain the ashram, whatever the ashram may be, even in terms of preaching, being able to move from one place to the other, the more intense we are in terms of what we need to accomplish, the better off we are in being able to reach the goal. Because intensity allows us to cry out for help. Intensity allows us to reach for help. Intensity allows us to penetrate the modes of nature. Without intensity, we cannot penetrate the modes of nature. It is required. So as a consequence, I would say that the most important part is to really focus on the japa. This is a foundation. There cannot be a compromise. There cannot be a compromise, be it temple devotees or outside, where we have weak japa and then we somehow be able to move forward and be able to do what Mahaprabhu wants us to do. Let's understand this very clearly by taking examples from how the movement started. This movement today is being enriched, inspired and maintained by a few very powerful pure devotees who sat under trees, different nights, and wrote down their realizations after chanting japa. This movement is being powered by them. It is not being powered by anything else. It is being powered by the inspiration coming from there. So if you understand it, the true source of inspiration is to be able to chant. And if we can chant, then we have the ability to inspire ourselves and to inspire others. So I would say that the intensity is not the issue of being very, very busy. I'm not bothered by that because it is required. It is very important to be engaged. I am bothered, I will be bothered if I do not have quality japa time in the morning, where I can't really even do that, where the intensity of running around is so much that I can't even do that. Then that's an issue. More advanced the devotee becomes, they can manage. Because they would be chanting throughout the day, whatever they are doing. They can be in touch with the holy names. They can manage. And more advanced the devotee becomes, they should also demonstrate that japa time is very important. They can't really move away from the precept of japa. Okay? And it can be collective japa sitting together, or it could be individual japa. Japa is very important for us. There's no two ways about it. If there's going to be a compromise, where japa is going to be compromised, the fissures and the cracks and the breakdown will occur. It's just a matter of time. It will occur. Yeah. This doesn't require astrology. This is Mahaprabhu's statement. This movement is being founded on japa. It is japa. If we can't chant, we are in trouble. We are in big trouble. And devotees who are finding it difficult to chant, that should be their focus. They should really focus on trying to fix that. They should be meeting seniors. If they have to rearrange the schedule. The seniors have to accommodate the juniors by giving them enough room so that they can at least complete their japa in a proper way. It's very important. Yeah, there should be no compromise on that, Prabhu. Intensity, bring it on. It is required. Yeah, it is required. Yeah, we need intensity. Because eventually it would be there, Everybody's Guru Maharaj will probably, if you've been a servant of the spiritual master, you would have seen. They fly down after 20 hours, and then people in the airport are greeting them completely fresh, thinking they are also fresh. They think they are from the spiritual sky, which is true, and they said they'll come down. They've just come after a 20-hour flight, they land there, people receive them. Maharaj, there's a class here, there's a class there, there's this. Immediately go there and they got to engage this, and they got to go after one program after the other. And senior devotees also struggle to find time. They do. It's a fact. But they do find time. To their advantage, if their faith has been very strong and their faith is stronger, then they have the ability to chant at different parts of the day, to be able to accommodate what they missed in the morning program in chanting. They have the ability to do all of that. But the most important principle we have to realize is the spiritual master's instruction carries power. We don't realize that. The spiritual master's instruction carries power. Srila Prabhupada's instruction carries power. The beauty is, we get empowered when we take that instruction and start following it. We receive Shakti. Without Shakti, nothing is possible. We receive instructions, We carry it out, we do this. I gave my own example. I gave my example yesterday, I was talking in the class, wasn't I? Where I met my spiritual master just before he left, in the sense I had a meeting with him. And it was around 3 months before he departed to the spiritual sky. And he was very, very generous in being able to see me. And in that meeting, I asked him very submissively, we were all very heartbroken because of his condition. He was effulgent, but he was quite broken in terms of his body. And he said that he told me this, he said, I'm a lot sicker than I look. Then I said, we could not understand. I told him, we were all crying actually, and we said, we don't understand, why do you have to go through so much? It was just too painful. Collarbone broken, leg amputated, the whole body a mess, cancer here, cancer there, and he's sitting there. He said, pain in Krishna consciousness is pleasure. Pain in Krishna consciousness is pleasure. He made that statement. Because he kind of knew that whatever he was going through was going to assist devotees. That's the only reason why it was pleasure. So otherwise it wasn't. It was just suffering. So I asked him, saying, Guru Maharaj, please give me instructions on what I ought to be doing in seva for yourself. He just gave me a few instructions, but the most poignant, most straightforward instruction that he gave me was, he said, read Srila Prabhupada's books and preach. Read Srila Prabhupada's books and preach. This was the instruction he gave me. Notably, before the instruction was received by me auditorily in my ear, I had great difficulty in reading Shastra and speaking. I had great difficulty. I had all kinds of challenges to even speak and read Shastra before he actually gave me the instructions to read Shastra and speak. When he told me, read Srila Prabhupada's books and preach, and I came back to my home state in America, everything changed where everything started making complete sense. Bhagavad Gita started making complete sense. I could speak. I was very nervous. I could actually speak. I lost that nervousness. I lost the fear of speaking. I lost the fear of even understanding Shastra. Then I understood that Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koyaka, he had practically empowered me at that point in time by giving me instructions. All I had to do was follow those instructions. By following those instructions, the power came to me. And I was able to offer something of substance in terms of understanding for my own purification and also be able to assist others. So the point I want to make is this principle applies across the board for every instruction as the spiritual master gives. Every instruction they give, even if it doesn't make sense, and let us assume that even the calculations are wrong, since it has come through the parampara, if we accept those instructions and we act upon it, we will find that our life has changed for the better, because Krishna takes charge and he makes it happen. Because the Guru Parampara acts through many personalities. So the point is, it's very important for us to realize that when we are asked to chant, we are being given power. So the most important thing which I would like to share is in terms of difficulty in meeting rounds. That difficulty has to be overcome. We have to struggle to complete 16. Struggle to complete 16, because that way we are fulfilling the spiritual master's order. And by fulfilling the spiritual master's order, we are still maintaining that particular Shakti which was given to us. Right. We are striving to maintain it. So I hope I answered your question, Prabhu. It was pretty elaborate. I have to give an example as well. Yeah. If you all think that I somehow speak a few things, now you know the secret. Yeah. I was completely dumb. There's Mukam Karoti Vachanam Pangum Langayate Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam. 100%. Yeah, I was completely dumb, deaf, everything. If I'm able to share something and understand Shastra even a little bit, it was because of that order. Otherwise, there was no chance whatsoever. Yes, Prabhu.
Regarding the prayer, so I can imagine myself verbally saying this prayer. I've pieced it together now in my head. But to actually mean that, like, for example, say if we're a bit vain, like posing in the mirror, something like that, and then we're praying to the Lord, take away anything where that's open to then, you might just get attacked, or someone might throw acid in your face, or like something so severe can happen to take a desire if you've got some attraction to the opposite sex. My mind always thinks the worst. I mean, I've got that type of mentality. So then I'm thinking, I'm praying, take it away from me. You know, you could have some accident, and you know, you're no longer a man or something. And these are things I actually, because I have thought about this before that, but I just. I like the idea of surrendering this much, but I just feel like
it's vulnerable.
How could you possibly even pray like that and then be open to?
I had the same vulnerability when this was given to me. I felt the same way. I was very vulnerable. You see, you were brahmachari, I was a grihastha, so I had even more other attachments and fears when making this kind of a prayer in front of Krishna. But my spiritual master encouraged me. He said, come to the understanding that Krishna is going to help you come closer to him. Just come to that understanding. You know, just do not fear. And he says this, Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita. This is 18.66. There's a reason why he says, Sarvadharman paritejya mamekam sharanam vraja. Aham tum sarva papebhyo mokshayasmi ma suchaha. He's saying ma suchaha, do not fear. This is the reason. He's saying, do not fear because I love you. I love you so much that at any given time, no matter what happens to you, this is an expression of my love to you. This is an expression of my love to you. I love you so much. So the point is, Prabhu, surrender is a vulnerable choice. It does make one feel quite vulnerable, quite exposed in reality. But I believe that this does not happen with the intensity with which we think it would. It is more a situation of practically allowing us to give up our anarthas and be able to move closer to Krishna. But I guess that's the price we pay, the fear that we have. And even though you have that fear, wanting to make that prayer, even with that fear, saying, Krishna, I place my life in your hands, this is the Swarup Lakshana of sadhu. A sadhu's real Swarup Lakshana, the internal quality of a sadhu is complete dependence on Krishna. So this is the Swarup Lakshana. Actually we make a prayer, submitting ourselves and depending on him and saying, you do whatever you need to do, you know, I have submitted myself to you. This is the Swarup Lakshana. This gift, Prabhu, of going through experiences of submission and then Krishna coming and then holding on to us and ensuring that we understand that he is our greatest benefactor, that experience is the internal transformation that is required for advancement. This is the Swarup Lakshana of a sadhu. Complete dependence. So take a chance, you know, take a gamble, go before Krishna and make this prayer and allow him to give us the experiences that we need so that we can move forward. The disciples of Srila Prabhupada, many disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they would probably attest to this. They would say that they would not have probably done whatever they have done for Prabhupada, even if they were paid $1 million. I mean, they did such things which are unimaginable, putting their lives at risk, putting everything at risk. You know, they did things which were like unimaginable those days. They were very young, but even though they could apparently see dangers, but they did it. But the Swarup Lakshana, the primary Swarup, internal conditioning of devotee, sadhu, is complete dependence on Krishna. That complete dependence comes after, you know, with a certain vulnerability as well. But that vulnerability is overcome as we chant and we develop love and we understand that no matter what he does, I'm going to be okay. But that's the beginning. That's the beginning. Thank you for your question. It's a very frank, straightforward question, and I guess I could relate to it.
And with that, what do you think of the approach of, I've heard some senior devotees that prayed to Lord Nrsingadev, and then he had some realization that he says, oh, you know, help me, my Krishna conscious, in a nice way or nicely. Is that too? Would you say that's too much, putting too much condition on the Lord that purify me, but in a nice way, or do you think it's best to purify me if you have got this fear?
This goes back to the understanding of Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarori Vasahishnuna Amani Manadena Kirtane Sadahari. That at any given time, our circumstances are exactly what we need to go on and progress to the next level in Krishna consciousness. This is Trinadati Sundishina. Understanding that Krishna has arranged the environment, Krishna has arranged the Sangha, Krishna has arranged the circumstances of the physical body, He has arranged the economics, He has arranged the relationship related problems, if there are any. All of this is a part of understanding that this is all what I need for me to be able to move forward. Having said that, this understanding has to be there in our heart, that this is Krishna's arrangement. Having said that, I do acknowledge that when we experience the mode of ignorance, as in tamasic, really intense experiences, in the negative side, inauspicious, then it does leave certain samskaras which become a bit difficult because it takes time for those to go away for a long period of time. We should have no concern whatsoever because we are asking Krishna to take charge. He is not going to be doing things in an inefficient, haphazard way. He is going to be doing it in such a manner that even if we have experiences, we ultimately are going to thank Him for it. So that confidence has to be there. You see, that confidence has to be there. This is love, right? Yeah. This is actually quite, when we put out these questions and these thoughts out into ether and we start reflecting on it, then we understand where we are as well. Do we really trust Him? Do we really trust Him? Do I really trust Him, to do what is best for me? So I would think, yes, go ahead and make that statement and allow Him to make the changes. So I would do that. Sure.
Could you just repeat that prayer again?
Well, it is a part of, I'll tell you where I saw it and where it was also written. The Beggar 2 book, my spiritual master wrote 4 beggar books. The Beggar 2 book has this prayer, and it's the prayer which I chant is that, I think is it behind that? Do you see it behind it, Prabhu?
Yeah.
Can you read it?
There's 2, bro. Give up your improper desire. And there's another one, advice to a special friend.
Oh, can you read one of them?
These words.
Should I get this one?
Yeah. Perhaps we could just reach to me. Okay. I will find it. It's not in the back of this one, but I'll find out where it is in the back of, and I'll share it. The prayer is standing before Krishna and Yudhishthira, Radha Gokulananda, and practically making a statement saying, Krishna, please take away whatever needs to be taken away from me for me to be a better servant of Srila Prabhupada. Please give me whatever needs to be given for me to be a better servant of Srila Prabhupada. Is that the one? Yeah. Which one is that? Is it 3 or? One, beggar 1. Okay, I got that wrong. I'm sorry. Yeah, do you know how this came about, this series? Anybody knows? I'll just share very quickly. Guru Maharaj, he had this habit, because of his intensity, to go into the forest in Gitanagari, and he used to sit, chant, and cry out. And as he chanted and cried out for mercy, he used to do that. Realizations used to pour out, and he used to record those realizations on a diary. And then these diaries used to be kept. He never thought of publishing them or anything like that. Then on one Vyas Puja, one of my god sisters, she came upon this diary in his room. She, without asking for his permission, she actually took it and made it into a book. And then gifted it to him in the Vyas Puja. And he became pleased. He didn't chastise her or anything. He said, okay, publish it then. Because he took it as Krishna's arrangement. He just kind of let it go. So this is very, very personal for him. So it is almost, he went to the forest, cried out, begged, and then he got this. That's why he called it the beggar series. And this is the reason why he wrote those. This is the prayer. Take away my will, Krishna, I'm yours. Force me to do what is right and best. Use me as you like. You be my intelligence, you be my mind, you act as my will. I don't know what is best for me. In this lifetime, I'm trying so hard and nothing is working. I ask you to put me in the right place at the right time for the right thing. Whatever is best, whether it is auspicious or inauspicious, bring upon me what I need. My desire, my intelligence, even my will, they are all contaminated. I offer them all to you. My dear Lord Shyam Sundara, I am yours. You do with me what is best. Help me to be eager to accept, not in a grudging mood, but with real zeal and enthusiasm as I submit myself and ask you, what can I do? This was his statement. So from this, the prayer then becomes, this also kind of addresses the vulnerability. I can't really submit myself, you do what you want me to do. So he says, help me to be eager to accept if there are changes in life, not in a grudging mood as well. So it can be included. But practically this is take away. I used to do it this way because this is what I heard from him in a short was, please take away whatever needs to be taken away for me to be a better servant of Srila Prabhupada. Please give me whatever needs to be given in abundance for me to be a better servant of Srila Prabhupada. Then the third part was, if there is any activity, and then bring upon me all the experiences that I need, whether auspicious or inauspicious. Don't let me hold back based on my senses. I want everything. I want to experience it. Bring upon me all that is required for me to be a better servant of Srila Prabhupada, whether auspicious or inauspicious. And then the last part was, the practical side to it was, if there is even a thought which is not in line with Srila Prabhupada's mission, sabotage it. He had no issues. And what I found in my own realizations was, I've gone through many experiences, yes, many intense ones, but the main thing which I found amongst all of these was the fact that spiritual life becomes easy. Let me underline that. Spiritual life becomes very easy, chanting becomes easy, reading becomes easy. So that is the sum total of all of this. I found it. The second thing which I found was, if I were to chant this prayer in the morning, then I go out in the day and I have an experience. I don't have a basis for that experience. Oh, I chanted to Krishna, saying, do this. And this Krishna has brought about this experience. Okay, now I can relate to it. It's perhaps for my own advancement. So we get to move forward. So it kind of sets the stage for experiences. It's an amazing thing, actually. It's so simple. But this is, in reality, the desire of Srila Rupa Goswami. This is Anyabhilashita Shunya in practice. Practically saying, Krishna, I can't do it, you do it. I'm still there, 7.16 with my desires, aspirations, weaknesses. You take me to this Anyabhilashita Shunyam stage, Krishna. And prayers are so powerful, amazingly powerful. And English ones work too. Krishna understands English. So that's the beauty. Krishna understands English. He can comprehend. So that's the beauty of these prayers. So thank you so much. Yeah. And is there anything else before we leave? I think. Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, love to be here. I can say that. It's love to be here. Wonderful place. There's some potency in the Dham here. There's some potency, isn't it? It's very nice. Very nice. Yes, Prabhu.
But how did you come across Krishna consciousness, or when was the first time you met Maharaj? It's not too personal.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. I share this quite openly to show my own weaknesses. I was introduced to Krishna consciousness in the early 80s. And in the early 80s, one of my neighbors or childhood friends, they were outside India, and they came in touch with devotees, Sankirtan devotees, and they became life members, and they became a part of the movement. I was born into a family which was following the Ramanuja Parampara, so my early samskaras were already there in terms of everything we do in ISKCON. I already had experience one way or the other, but in certain variations based on the time, place and circumstances of the other parampara. I was not a serious practitioner of the other Siddhanta, but I was in that environment, let me put it that way. It's like one of the Gurukuli kids, they grew up in the environment. I was there. I'm not saying they're not serious, I'm just making that I was in the environment. So I was in the environment. Anyways, so then I met the devotees and they told me, this is what is being offered, it's wonderful, and so on and so forth. And I had a lot of resistance, and my resistance specifically was that it was based on ignorance, that, why should we accept something which is coming from America? It doesn't make any sense, it's like, I'm there in the bedrock of conservative India, why should I go and accept something from America? That was the kind of ignorance. And then what happened was that the devotees are persistent, as they always are. They had just started out, so you know how it is when they start out. They're full of gusto. They were very persistent. So they handed me tapes. One of those tapes was the entire day's schedule of prayers that we do in the temple. So there was Nashinga Pranam in that as well. And for some reason, the moment I heard Nashinga Pranam, something changed. I don't know who the devotee is. I'm still searching for who the devotee is whom I first heard. It was early 80s, so it was probably one of those devotees, who were singing then. I heard Nashinga Pranam, and it was a complete transformation. The next morning I was in Mangalarti. All the resistance had just been smashed down, and I kept hearing throughout. I'm kind of a person who gets attached to things, and I do a lot of it. And I completely heard Nashinga Pranam perhaps for several hours. Kept playing it again. Next morning I was in Mangalarti. I made arrangements, I was in Mangalarti. When I reached Mangalarti, the verse was Manmanabha Madbhakto Madhyajimam Namaskuru, 18.65. And I remember that even to this day. And I knew that this was my life. That day I knew this was my life. But it took me around 20 years to actually find my spiritual master. It took me 20 years to find my spiritual master. And I was in different sanghas, came in touch with many devotees of Srila Prabhupada. It took me around 20 years. And when I found him, it was also very profound. Srila Prabhupada helped me. And I shared this, and I just wanted to share this very quickly, because Srila Prabhupada's mercy is boundless, and he really looks out for all of us. He really looks out. He is still very much present in his murtis. We all experience that. And I made my prayer to him once in New Vrindavan in 2003. In 2003 I made this prayer to him because devotees are observing that I was around for so long and I acted like one of them, but I was not initiated. They kept asking me, who is your spiritual master? Prabhu, aren't you initiated? Aren't you initiated? What's happening? Aren't you initiated? And I said, okay, it's perhaps a little bit, I felt bad. I said, okay, maybe it's time for me to take that more seriously, the initiation part. So I approached Srila Prabhupada in New Vrindavan in Thanksgiving of 2003, and I prayed to him, saying, Srila Prabhupada, I want to surrender in a more formal way. I really don't know how to do it. I'm submitting myself to you. Please make some arrangements so that I can know who my spiritual master is. I don't know who it is. Then that said, the same day, there was something. I started feeling in my heart that I must listen to the classes of His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj. I had not met him, I don't know about him, I had not seen him, I didn't know anything. I just knew that I had to listen. Then I approached one of his disciples, Drishtadyumna Prabhu in New Vrindavan. I told him I need the tapes of your spiritual master. And he handed me. Next morning in Mangalarti, I went to Mangalarti, I came back, my bed was full of tapes, many tapes. Then I said, phenomenal. I picked up all those tapes, I put it in, I kept quiet. As I was beginning my ride back from New Vrindavan to New Jersey, it's a 6-hour drive, I turned on, I put the tape into the dock. The moment I heard his voice, I had not heard the class, I had not heard the substance of the class. The moment I heard his voice, there was this extraordinary experience where he completely took over. I knew that this person was my connection to Srila Prabhupada. He is my spiritual master. My wife was there, I told her, this is our guru. Immediately I told her, I turned around and I told her, this is our guru. Then I wrote him, Guru Maharaj, I want to surrender to you. He was in South Africa preaching. He was in a 35-tour country. And then he came back and he gave me an appointment in April because that was when he was coming back to the States in DC. And in the interim, the mind started telling me maybe it is Srila Radhanath Swami Maharaj. Because the mood was so similar, they were such close friends. So there was this particular thing, maybe it is His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. Then in Gaur-Purnim, on Gaur-Purnim day in 2004, I felt very bad, saying Srila Prabhupada indicated this to me that Guru Maharaj is, Srila Bhaktivedanta Maharaj is my spiritual master. And yet here I am aspiring and thinking that Srila Radhanath Swami is. I felt very bad, Almost I felt guilty that I was not acting according to the inspiration that came to me. So I went back to Srila Prabhupada on Gaur-Purnim day. It was 10:30 in the night. The temple was swept clean. I was the last one in the temple room. I went back to Srila Prabhupada, supplicated, said, Srila Prabhupada, I need proof. I'm not clear on the choice. Please, Srila Prabhupada, help me. How can I understand that Srila Bhaktivedanta Maharaj is indeed my spiritual master and not Srila Radhanath Maharaj? Just at a particular time, it was 10:30 in the night. A brahmachari came running down from the brahmachari ashram and he handed me an envelope. And in that envelope, he said, this is some maha from your Guru Maharaj. I opened it, there was a Maha cloth of a cloth which was owned by Srila Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, and there was a picture. He said, keep it on your altar and worship it, right in front of Prabhupada, just at that point in time. You know, it was like that. No particular, confusion, just that. Then I met Guru Maharaj on May 2nd, and meeting him was quite a profound experience, because meeting him in his presence, I didn't know, because I was quite neophyte, even now. I sat before him, we sat at 6 o'clock in the evening. He and I spoke, and I suddenly found it was 8:30 in the evening. For 2.5 hours, I didn't even know it was 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours just sped by. That was my first meeting with him in Gitanagari. He was very curious to see me, because I had this name and Vaishnava names. I'm probably one of the Indians in the God family. Very rare in that, because he was mostly dealing with devotees who were in the West. So he wasn't preaching much in India. It was very rare for that. I was one of them. And so he was very curious at that point. And then I met him on the 2nd of May. And then 2 days later, his secretary called me saying, Guru Maharaj wants to initiate you at the end of this month. So I got initiated 20 days later. So, it was like boom, boom, boom. It's almost like, there was no, I think it was the time, when you meet the spiritual master, it just happened. No resistance, nothing, it just happened. It was a phenomenal journey since then, and I was very fortunate, very, very fortunate to have come in touch with him, and yeah, it was phenomenal. Yeah. My god brother, His Grace Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu, always used to tell me, he used to use this expression. He says, Sri Vrindavan, we hit the jackpot. I said, yeah, we hit the jackpot. We did. Yeah, we did. Yes, Prabhu.
Do you feel that the spiritual master is still with you?
Yes, Prabhu. Undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. His presence is actually felt by many, many devotees, many souls who were not only the disciples, many of them. His presence is very profoundly felt. Very profoundly felt. Very profoundly felt, actually. His presence is overwhelmingly there. I guess it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult for a disciple to lose the spiritual master. It's very difficult. Very, very difficult experience, because you are in uncharted waters, and then you have to depend on Vani. But more importantly, the realization that I have is, in many ways, he made himself more available after leaving than he was when he was on the planet. He made himself more available, I would say. Very accessible.
Can you explain what you mean?
I don't want to get into trouble, so... No, he made himself more available in the sense, all kinds of answers come quite readily through scripture when we pray to him. So when I offer prayers to him and I request for help, the answers come very readily. It could be experiences, it could be answers that come in touch with scripture very readily through his classes. And there are many arrangements that get made, which I would certainly say, it not be possible at all. And I gave that example of my being able to even speak Shastra. I had no qualification whatsoever, and then he, somehow or the other, his orders were so powerful that there was so much Shakti that he just is helping me somehow. So I actually have a nervous breakdown every time I sit down to give a class, even now. But I end up speaking 4 or 5 times a week. And every time I sit down to give a class, I have a nervous breakdown. I become stressed out, thinking I can't do it. And then something strange happens. On days in which I feel that I haven't really understood the audience and I can't speak, those are the days the audience actually comes back and says that I've given a wonderful class. Then I realize that those days in which when I feel absolutely helpless in my service, those are the days when I surrender and he comes through and he assists, and the devotees who I speak to feel very profoundly helped through the class. So those are the different ways in which he's been making himself available. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Dear Prabhus, I would love to have your association again. I have to go back down and I have a meeting at 1:30, so I don't want to, but I would love to have your association again. And next time I come, I really wanted to hear from everyone, and I didn't have an opportunity to do so. This trip was, I don't know, it just happened in such a way that I've been very tied up with so many different things. But I do want to sit and hear, so I'll be very grateful. Maybe next time when I come we can sit and speak and share. You could share your realizations and thoughts. It will be very enriching. You would offer Sangha. Thank you.
One second.